Porsche Taycan was supposed to be one of the biggest challenges to the Tesla Model S, and in some ways it really is. However, when the specs were unveiled last year, a lot of people were disappointed. First, the price was double of what everybody kind of expected, but there's definitely a market for that, and for that price. The charging rate was 100 kilowatts less than everybody expected, though at still very good 250 kilowatts. Definitely, can easily compete with the Tesla's V3 superchargers. But I think the biggest disappointment that everybody had once we've learned the EPA range, which came to 201 miles for the turbo version of Taycan and 192 miles for the Turbo S version. 192 is getting into some, Nissan Leaf / BMW i3 territory. However, we know that the EPA range is not always fair to all of the cars. As a matter of fact, take Kia Niro EV, for example. I myself can vouch, and a lot of owners, the real owners in my Facebook group for Kia EV owners, that the realistic range is 20 or 30% more than what the EPA says. This same might be true for Porsche Taycan. Now, I have not driven it yet. However, our friend Tom Moloughney has, and he's done so twice now. The first time he was testing out some really cool things. As a matter of fact, he went over the top speed of 162 miles an hour that Porsche claims that the car can go. He went 167. So he definitely has gotten more out of Taycan than even the specs are claiming. But this time around, he specifically did a real world driving range. He drove it on a pretty good distance, and he's going to be here for his segment Plugged In with Tom Moloughney in just a second. And by the way, a quick reminder, many other contributors are now here on this channel talking about different awesome topics for you guys, including the CEO of Faraday Future, Karsten Breitfeld, the manufacturing guru, Cindy Monroe, and of course, Rich Rebuilds. So definitely subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because these people are absolutely awesome. And if you already have, then click on the bell notification icon so you don't miss anything moving forward. But let's talk to Tom, see what he has discovered, because he did not get the EPA range, not even close. But this is a real world test. We'll talk about how he did it. We'll talk about the numbers. Before that, of course, a quick reminder that this video and this channel is sponsored by Byton. Check out their all-electric SUV coming to the United States and Europe next year. They're starting production just in a few months for the Chinese market. $0 down to reserve this, about a minute of your time. So go to the description of this video so you can reserve your Byton today. All right, without further ado, let's talk to Tom and find out what he's done, how he did it, and what the real world range for him that he discovered for Porsche. Tom, how you doing, my friend?
Hey, Alex, how's it going?
All right. Well, I'm a little jealous because I have to say you've been behind the wheel of this car quite a few times now, and I haven't at all. So, but that's why it's great to have you on this channel, because you have so many interesting experiences and knowledge. Tell us a little bit about what you did. Tell us what you found out and why you were not able to get the EPA range that Porsche has been rated at.
Okay, so yeah, as you mentioned, I've been one of the few lucky people that's been able to have 2 media drives with Porsche Taycan. Back in September, I was able to drive a Taycan Turbo S from Copenhagen, Denmark, to Hamburg, Germany, which was somewhere around 450 miles. And that was a really, really cool press drive. And as we noted, we talked about it here on the channel, I took most of the time to really fully test out the performance of the vehicle, as I think most people would if they had that opportunity. Did multiple 0 to 100 runs. We were in real rural country roads where we could really do whatever we wanted with the car. And then plus out on the Autobahn in Germany, as you mentioned, I was able to get it up well over 160 miles an hour sustained. We topped out at 167 miles an hour for a while, and the car just loves to live at like 130, 140. It's just cruising around like a normal car at 70 miles an hour. It really was a tremendous piece of engineering marvel that Porsche made. But this time now, I was just invited to drive the Taycan Turbo from Atlanta, Georgia, down to Daytona Beach for the Daytona raceway, to the racetrack for the Rolex 24 Hours at Daytona. So hopped on that opportunity. And since I really tested out the performance of the Taycan over in Europe, there was really no need to do that now. And plus, I'm really not a fan of getting pulled over in like Georgia or Florida with New Jersey driver's license going 150 miles an hour, probably be in jail. So what I did was I said, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to drive the Taycan like I owned it and just was going on a 450-mile drive. I wasn't going to hypermile, but I wasn't going to really pound on it either. I was going to say, look, I need to go 450 miles. How am I going to drive the car just to get from here to there? So did that, averaged about anywhere between 75, 80 miles an hour. That was what the flow of traffic was going. So that's what I was driving. I wasn't going to, like I said, hold up traffic, and I wasn't going to race people on the way. So the cool thing is we did the trip. We had to stop twice at Electrify America stations. We probably could have gotten away with just driving once, but the placement of the stations, there wasn't one right in the middle. So we stopped twice, and Porsche felt more comfortable with us not trying to run it down to zero, because the last thing you want to do on a media drive is have to tow a car. So they had it set up so we had to stop like 135 miles in, and then about another 150 miles in for the 436 mile drive. And over the period of the time, like I said, we averaged over 70, 75 miles an hour. When we left Georgia, the temperatures were 40 degrees, so it wasn't like warm, great range weather. When we arrived in Daytona, it was in the 60s, I believe. So again, it got warmer, but it wasn't like perfect range weather. We averaged 2.96 miles per kilowatt hour and over the 436 miles. So that computes to about 248 miles of range. Now, I was driving a turbo, not a Turbo S, and as you mentioned earlier, that's rated at 201 on the EPA. So, we did significantly better than what the EPA range rating is. Now, that's not a big surprise because, people sometimes, I think, hang their hat too strongly on the EPA range rating. The EPA or the WLTP is kind of like a guide for you to go by. It's not like, well, this car can do 201 miles under any condition. That's like the average. If you're driving in the winter, if you're driving in the summer, if you sometimes have air conditioning, sometimes you have the heater on, sometimes the battery's been cold soaked. So, 201 miles should be like an average. So I'm not that surprised that we beat the EPA range rating. I'm a little surprised that we beat it by so much. If I would have guessed, especially the fact that I wasn't driving slowly, I was going 75, 80 miles an hour, I would have thought that we were going to get about 225 miles, maybe beat it by like 25 miles. But instead, we beat it by almost 50. So, that showed me that, the car is very well capable of taking on long trips, provided that there's infrastructure.
All right, so I guess the big question here is why the EPA range for Taycan, just like it is for Kia Niro and a few other models, is so off. I know it's pretty generous to Tesla and not so generous for some other models. And I know I recently did a video about, I don't know if you've seen it, is where the way EPA range is actually calculated. They just do this test and then they subtract 30% for all of the brands, for all of the models to accommodate for the air conditioning, heating, where different brands and models do it differently. Some are very efficient because they're using heat pumps, they're using different temperature switches for the battery cooling, and some do it with just an electric heater, just like Tesla, and there are no switches, so they're not as efficient. Why do you think the difference is so big for specifically here for Porsche Taycan, especially where the WLTP rating wasn't that much off, at least the percentage wasn't as off from Tesla WLTP rating for the Europeans?
Yeah, so EPA, WLTP, all the range ratings, they're just real kind of estimates of what you can expect if you own the car. You have to understand people live in different regions. There's different times of the year. If I had done this drive in the dead of winter and drove from, Toronto, Canada to Buffalo, New York or whatever, the range would have been a lot different. So I think, these range ratings, we can't live and die by them. We have to understand that they're an estimate, and they're used to give the owners an idea of what they can expect as a kind of a year-round average. So I think we have to stop focusing in micro, managing that one number that the EPA comes out with, and understand that we can, at any car, like my BMW i3's range, the range was like 113 rated on the EPA. And I drove it over 130 miles a few times. And in the winter, there were times where it only went 85 miles. But, you put those things together and it averages, 110, 115 miles of range. So, gas cars aren't totally unlike that either. You don't always get 35 miles per gallon with a 35 miles per gallon car. Sometimes you get 27, sometimes you get 40. It depends on, where you're driving, what the conditions are, what the vehicle is doing. So, I think that, we kind of need to chill a little bit with that, focusing on that one number, like we're supposed to worship it. This range test that I did was a flawed test. It was a one-way test. I'm not saying that, I did the perfect range test with the Taycan. I didn't. Under better conditions, I should have been able to do a loop and end up where I started off, and control a lot of different factors. But this was what I was offered by Porsche. I took the opportunity to say, hey, if I'm a Porsche owner, let me see what I could do on a 435-mile drive without really trying. And I beat the EPA range rating by more than 20%. And, I think that bodes well for Porsche owners. And you mentioned Tesla, and you said, why does Tesla numbers seem to be closer, whatever? We have to understand Tesla also opens up 100% of the battery pack. And so their range will be greater just because of that, even though they then say, you really should only charge to 80 or 90%. Porsche, for instance, holds 10 kilowatt hours in the reserve of their battery. So if Porsche had done what Tesla did, and they allow you to charge to 100%, but then tell their owners you really shouldn't charge more than 80 or 85%, Tesla's EPA range rating would have probably been about 230 miles, because you got to add another 10 kilowatt hours onto the rating. So somewhere between 220 and 230 would have been their range rating if they treated it the same way that Tesla did. Still not as good as Tesla. Tesla's still the efficiency king. Hyundai does a really good job at building efficient cars, but Tesla's still the best at it, But not only are they the best, then they also open up 100% of the pack. So it's kind of like piling on. But in any event, I own a Model 3, that we've talked about that. It's a long range, all-wheel drive. It's range rated at 310 miles per charge. I don't get anywhere near that. Even in really good conditions, even when I charge to 100%, I'm sure if I really took it easy and kind of hyper-mild, I could get 300 miles. But when I do on regular road trips and I take it easy and I'm good for, even in good weather, 250 miles per charge, somewhere around there. So, there's not that huge of a difference in these cars, like, the EPA range and the WLTP was closer, like the EPA range shows. In my opinion, at least, after driving both of these cars, my car, which is EPA range rated at 310, and the Taycan at 201, the Taycan isn't doesn't have 1/3 less the range that my Model 3 does. It has, a good 20% less, maybe 25% tops, but it's not 109 miles less range rating than my Model 3, even if I charge it to 100%.
Yeah. Well, when I had my Tesla, I usually a lot of times I would come in 40% under the EPA range. But all right, now I know you also, I think with Porsche, I think they've gotten a lot of also bad rap because, and just like I-Pace and others, because of, people saying, well, the battery is not very efficient. I personally think that all people care about is a realistic range rather than efficiency. Every time people who bought gas cars that are high performance cars, they don't care how many miles a gallon that car goes. You buy a $200,000 car, you don't care if you're going to spend an extra $100 on your, gas bill. In this case, probably like $20 extra bucks for electricity. So I don't buy this whole efficiency argument. I feel like it's all like kind of a nerdy stuff. Nothing against nerdy stuff, but it's not something that consumers really care about. But another thing that I've noticed you mentioned in your article, and there's an article that you published about this on InsideEVs, is that you also got to charge this car at the Electrify America chargers. And tell us a little bit about that, because as I mentioned, the biggest disappointment to me was the fact that they did not end up with a 350 kilowatt charging rate, but went with 250 kilowatt charging rate. How did that go for you?
Okay, so to clear it up, it's actually Porsche lists that it can charge up to 270 kilowatts, not 250. And it's many of the Porsches have been recorded charging up to like 275, 276. So, it's not 250.
Corrected on that. Yeah,
270. So, to me, that certainly wasn't a disappointment. When I was in Europe charging on the Ionity network, we consistently got it to 270 kilowatts when we were plugging in, because we were driving, we stretched out the range more. We rolled into the charging stations there at like 1% at one point and like 2% on the next charge. We were purposely just draining the batteries so we could record the high-speed charging, and it quickly ramped up to 270 kilowatts and held it for a while. I mean, I remember we were at close to 90%, and it was still at over 100 kilowatts charging. I was really, really impressed with how long it held a high rate of charge. Here on this trip now down to Florida, it went well. It didn't go as well. I didn't get 270 kilowatts. One of the Electrify America stations we went to, they were having issues at it, and Electrify America actually had a crew of engineers there when we pulled in. So we knew that we weren't going to be lucky on that one. My car on that station only got up to 80 kilowatts. The other car that was there charged at like 160, I think. And then when we arrived in Daytona Beach at the Electrify America station there, when Porsche recharged the car, it did go up over 250 kilowatts. So, it's kind of like roll the dice now with Electrify America network. You don't know what you're going to get, but it might not have been the network. These were pre-production cars, and there were some software issues with the car. And Porsche warned us when we were going that, look, this is like 3 generations of software behind the production cars. So there were some things that really weren't functioning that right, and they believed that could have been limiting the charge rate. But even with that, when we pulled in at one time, I think we were at 39%, and we got up to 98% in 31 minutes, I think. So, I was nearly fully charged in a half an hour. And to me, that's completely acceptable. With my Model 3, I'm actually going to do an article on this on InsideEVs in a couple of days. With my Model 3, I'm not seeing anywhere near 150 kilowatts that it can. All the supercharging stations that I go around here, I average like 70 kilowatts. Every now and then I plug in and it goes up over 100 for like a minute or two, and then it trickles down to like 80. So, Tesla still has the best charging network out there, hands down. You just roll in, you plug in, and it works. But as far as the charging speed, none of them are getting the maximum all the time. That just isn't the state of charging right now.
All right. Well, let's talk about the price. I mean, we went over the range and the charging rate, and of course, price is something that's it's a philosophical issue for a lot of people. But do you feel like this car? Because I know you've been very excited about this car, and you've had really positive things to say about it, even though I know you're very impartial, so that's why I take you for your word. But do you think that the price, which is essentially double of what Model S costs, even at its highest configuration, do you think there's a market for that? Do you think there will be quite a few people who will say, you know what, I can buy 2 Model S's for this, but I'm going to go with a Porsche Taycan? Do you think there's a market for it? And if so, who are those people, and what would be their reasons to go with a Taycan over the Model S?
So, a Porsche Panamera is double the cost of a BMW, M5. so we're talking about different cars here. To say that the Taycan costs twice as much as a Model S, then then in that sentence, then Porsche should never have sold any of their Panameras because it costs twice as much as, say, like a BMW M5. They're different cars. We can't. I know it's what people want to hear, but we can't keep circling back and comparing everything to a Tesla. Tesla's doing unbelievable things right now. I mean, it's why I know all the electric cars. I've driven all of them. What do I own? I own a Tesla. They make great electric cars right now. That doesn't mean the other manufacturers right now aren't starting to come out with really good electric cars too. The Taycan is a tremendous vehicle. If you could take price out of the issue and just say, Tom, we're going to give you one electric car in the market today, I would take the Taycan over a top-line spec Model S.
Really? Yes. Wow. I'm surprised because, I mean...
And I love the Model S.
Right.
But I've driven the Taycan 1,000 miles now, Alex. It's a tremendous car. It really is. It does pretty much everything I want it to do. It's got more than enough range for me to take it anywhere I want to take it. From New Jersey, I would drive that to Florida confidently. A friend of mine...
You just shocked me again.
Just got a Taycan, and he lives up in Cape Cod. He's driving it up through Canada, across the entire country of Canada, down the west coast of the U.S., down to the southern tip of the U.S., through Texas, through Florida, and then back up to where he lives. He's going to actually stop at my house in like 2 or 3 weeks. He just started out yesterday. I don't know how many miles it is, but it's got to be like 6,000 miles or something or more that he's driving his Taycan on. He just started this like epic journey. So you could do anything with it. As far as I'm concerned, the range is just fine. I think we have to love it for what it is. And if you look at like a Porsche Panamera, which is what it's closest to as far as Porsche, it's basically the same price, at least in the turbo trim, because the Panamera is $150,000, $160,000 if you get the top of the line trim, and they're selling pretty well. This Taycan is one of the best Porsches, or the best Porsche I've ever driven, and I've driven tons of Porsches. I'm not the only one to make that statement. Seasoned automotive veterans have said that. And I actually have a friend of mine that owns South Orlando Porsche in Florida. And he sold close to 50 of them already. He doesn't even have that in his allotment, but they're sold and people are waiting for the cars. And he has dozens of other people that have inquired about it, but they're going to hold off because they don't know how. He might have to wait a year or two before they can get them. So yeah, people are buying them.
Absolutely. And they'll be buying them even more because Porsche, for the first time in over 2 decades, is committed to run a Taycan ad on the Super Bowl. I just put out a video about it. And I know Audi is doing it also. And so is All Electric Hummer. And I'm going to have that video is also on the channel. But I got to tell you, Porsche's commercial, and I already did a video about this, is probably one of the best electric car commercials, not just for Porsche, for definitely just right on point commercial, but just for all of the electric cars. So I've as much as I personally would pick Model S any day over this car, but as I love the fact that it's a very good alternative, but also that they're actually advertising it during the Super Bowl. So kudos to them. I don't know if you've seen the ad, but it's for my taste, it's almost perfect.
I haven't seen it yet, but this goes to show you that Porsche is dead serious about this car. It's not like, well, we got to make an electric car, so let's make one. No, they are putting the brand behind this car. They see electrification as their future. I mean, they're not blind. Everybody should be by now seeing electrification as their future. But I know the folks at Porsche get it. The all-electric Macan is going to be coming out soon. They're electrifying Porsche, and they should, because as we know, you can't beat the performance, and Porsche is a performance brand. And I think the light bulb went off and they said, hey, wait a minute, like we could make even better, faster cars if we make them electric. And the the Taycan is a tremendous first offer.
Yeah, you're not the first one and probably not the last one who said that it's the best Porsche ever made. Porsche is not even afraid of saying it, so this is great. So I'm glad we cleared up about the EPA range. I do agree we need to have a better standard for everybody, but I also believe that anything over 200 miles is good enough for like 99% of us, because after all, we charge at home. All right, Tom, listen. Thanks so much once again. You know, firsthand experience is so important. You've done now 2 of these. You know, I can't wait to talk to you next week, because I know we're going to have some really exciting topics. So until next time, I'll see you in about a week.
Thanks for having me again. See you then.
All right, guys. So I'm going to link to the Tom's profile in the description of this video, and you can read the article that he wrote about this test drive, the previous test drive. He also test drove a few other cars lately, so check that out. And of course, if you want to follow him on Twitter, you should follow him on Twitter. He posts a lot of these pictures that we later talk about, like as he's doing it. So definitely check that out. Tom Moloughney, that is also in the description of this video. You know, even though I admit I'm not a big fan of Taycan in some ways, but I'm a big fan that it's here, that it's an alternative, and it's a very decent alternative. Some of the shortcomings that people see because they compare it to Tesla, I think they're, for most people, a moot point. Yes, it doesn't look good on paper, and just like I said, I'm absolutely really excited to see the Super Bowl commercial for them. Now at least 3 all-electric cars are going to be the center and the only product featured in the Super Bowl ads. So the revolution is happening. I'm looking forward to that. Don't forget to follow Tom. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. I'm looking forward to all of the comments. Other than that, see you guys next time, and remember to stay charged.